In the shivering early days of 2026, while most of the world was still recovering from its New Year celebrations, a single digital spark ignited an inferno that threatened to consume the British monarchy's most controversial branch. Picture a rain-slicked pavement in Los Angeles just outside a hotel so exclusive it does not even carry a name on its heavy brass doors. A woman, her face partially obscured by a cascading designer scarf, slips through a side entrance with practiced urgency. Exactly 10 minutes later, a powerful, familiar figure follows her path. This was not a scene from a scripted Hollywood thriller. It was the beginning of a real-life collapse for the dream of Montecito. As those grainy paparazzi images began to flood the internet, a chilling question echoed from London to California. Why was the Duchess meeting this man alone while her husband was nowhere to be found? The man was Markus Anderson, the influential architect of the Soho House empire, and the woman was Meghan Markle. But the true shock did not lie in the meeting itself. It lay in the timing. This rendezvous took place just hours after a notorious journalist had promised to reveal a dark secret that reportedly predated the royal wedding and continued long after the vows were spoken. But where was Prince Harry? The man who had famously vowed to move heaven and earth to shield his wife from the vultures of the press had vanished into a terrifying icy silence. No defensive statements, no angry lawsuits, just a void where a husband's protection should have been. Whispers began to circulate that while Meghan was in that hotel lobby, Harry was on a secret, desperate flight to Toronto, searching for a truth he hoped never existed. Was he looking for a way to save his family, or was he searching for the final reason to let it all go? The first days of 2026 did not arrive with the usual sense of renewal. Instead, they brought a cold, sharp wind that seemed to rattle the very foundations of the Montecito mansion. While the rest of the world was slowly shaking off the grogginess of New Year celebrations, a single razor-sharp statement appeared on social media, vibrating through the digital ether until it shook the core of the international community. The source was none other than Piers Morgan, a journalist whose name has become synonymous with a relentless, almost obsessive pursuit of the truth regarding the Duchess of Sussex. But this time, the tone was different. There was no immediate shouting, no lengthy television segment filled with fiery rhetoric. Instead, there was a calculated, icy promise. Piers Morgan posted just a few short lines to his personal account on the platform formerly known as Twitter. He claimed to be in possession of shocking evidence involving a dark secret between Meghan Markle and Markus Anderson, the membership director of the elite Soho House. The sting of the message lay in its precision. He did not merely suggest a past indiscretion. He emphasized that this matter may have continued even after she was wearing the wedding ring of a British prince. He ended the post with a phrase that acted like a slow-burning fuse. Just wait a little longer. The truth is about to be exposed. Within less than 30 minutes, the digital world exploded. The post garnered over 2 million views in that tiny window of time, a testament to the global fascination and perhaps exhaustion with the Sussex saga. From the posh drawing rooms of London to the sun-drenched hills of Los Angeles, the machinery of public opinion began to grind. Every royal fan group, every critic, and every casual observer rushed to dissect those few sentences. Why now? And more importantly, what could possibly be dark enough to warrant such a theatrical warning? Piers Morgan was a master of this game. He understood better than anyone that in the modern age, information is a weapon, but silence is the gunpowder. By providing no images, no leaked documents, and no specific dates in that initial blast, he forced the public to become his investigators. He knew that by leaving the details vague, the collective imagination of millions would fill in the blanks with something far more scandalous than any single photograph could ever depict. He sat back and watched as the world began to dig into the name that had remained in the shadows for far too long, Markus Anderson. To the uninitiated, Markus Anderson might seem like a background character in the Duchess's life, but to those who followed her journey from a supporting actress on a legal drama to a global icon, he was a pivotal figure. A Canadian man of Jamaican descent, Markus was the gatekeeper of Soho House, the exclusive chain of private clubs where the world's most powerful artists, billionaires, and celebrities went to disappear. He was the man who held the keys to the kingdom of privacy. Old photographs, some dating back to 2014 and 2016, were suddenly resurrected from the depths of the internet. In one image, Meghan is seen beaming beside Markus at a private party. In another, his hand rests familiarly on her shoulder. At the time, these were dismissed as the harmless markers of a close friendship or a savvy professional alliance. Markus was, after all, the man credited with introducing Meghan to the high society circles of London. But through the distorted lens of this new scandal, every smile felt sinister, and every touch felt like a piece of a puzzle that Harry was never meant to solve. The question that dominated every headline was simple, yet devastating. If this was purely a professional bond, why would a veteran journalist risk everything by calling it a dark secret? Why emphasize the wedding ring unless there was a betrayal of the ultimate vow? As the hours turned into days, the atmosphere in the media became suffocating. Public opinion split into two violent camps. One side argued that this was yet another vicious coordinated smear campaign designed to destroy a woman of color who dared to challenge the establishment. However, the other camp grew quieter and more observant. They noticed that this time, Meghan's usually lightning-fast legal team was not immediately filing injunctions to stop the talk. They noticed that the usual flurry of supportive articles in major American magazines was oddly delayed. And most importantly, they noticed the silence from within the walls of the Montecito villa. Piers Morgan, acting like a masterful director of a tragedy, waited exactly 48 hours before dropping his second breadcrumb. He posted again, stating that he was in no hurry because the truth doesn't run away. He was allowing the pressure to build, allowing the doubt to seep into the cracks of a marriage that had already been tested by the fires of global scrutiny. Just as the public began to wonder if there was any more room for escalation, an even more haunting voice emerged from Meghan's past. A second, perhaps, even more devastating wave crashed against the shores of public consciousness. This blow did not come from a London newsroom, but from the shadows of a fractured family dynamic in Florida. Samantha Markle, the estranged half-sister who had spent years acting as a persistent thorn in the Duchess's side, stepped forward into the blinding light of the scandal. She did not come with vague insinuations or the usual sibling petty grievances. Instead, she brought a series of cutting specific allegations that threatened to dismantle the very foundation of the woman the world thought it knew. Samantha chose her moment with the precision of a seasoned predator. Just hours after Markus Anderson was linked to a secret affair, she released a long, meticulously worded post. Her message was clear: she would no longer remain silent, while the world dug into a past she had witnessed firsthand. The central claim was so explosive that it caused a momentary silence across the internet. Samantha alleged that when she was only 19 years old, long before she was an actress or a royal, her sister had become pregnant. According to this account, the young woman had vanished into absolute seclusion for a period of 6 months. Samantha described it as a calculated disappearance, a time when she stayed away from friends, family, and any form of spotlight. The climax of this story was the birth of a baby boy. However, the child was not kept. Samantha claimed that the infant was surrendered to an older couple for adoption, a decision wrapped in layers of absolute secrecy that had held firm for over 2 decades. The accusation acted like a gallon of gasoline poured onto an already raging inferno. If this story were true, it would strike at the very heart of her modern identity. Samantha did not stop at the birth. She wove a thread that tied this ancient secret directly back to Markus Anderson. She heavily implied that Markus was not just a recent friend, but an inseparable link to this specific chapter of her life. He was, in Samantha's words, the keeper of the most dangerous secret in the Markle family history. But Samantha understood that social media posts are easily dismissed. To solidify her position, she accepted an interview on a digital channel specializing in royal coverage. With a voice that was both trembling and resolute, she spoke of seeing late-night calls and witnessing private meetings that made no sense at the time, but now felt like pieces of a sinister puzzle. Then came the detail that transformed a sibling rivalry into a constitutional nightmare for the House of Windsor. Samantha turned her focus toward London, specifically toward Princess Anne. She claimed that during the early days of the marriage, Princess Anne had come across an old medical report that had been flagged during the standard vetting process for new members of the family. This report allegedly recorded postpartum results with dates that matched perfectly with the year she was 19. Samantha described a clandestine meeting between herself and the Princess Royal, arranged so that Anne could ask the difficult questions that the men in the family were too polite or too terrified to voice. According to Samantha, the princess was visibly shocked, but was ultimately overruled by a royal machinery that chose silence to protect the image of the monarchy. This information shifted the entire direction of the storm. The internet became a digital crime scene. Amateur sleuths began digging through archives of Toronto newspapers from the mid-90s, looking for any mention of an adoption or a young woman matching the description who had vanished for half a year. They looked for connections between the older couple mentioned and Markus Anderson. The name Markus Anderson was now being searched hundreds of thousands of times an hour as people tried to find the thread that connected a 19-year-old girl in Florida to the powerful man in Canada. Samantha's appearance transformed the scandal from a tabloid rumor into a full-scale family tragedy. It was no longer just about Meghan and Markus. It was about broken trust and a legacy of deception. The atmosphere surrounding the British monarchy had reached a level of toxicity not seen in several decades. As the accusations continued to circulate like a heavy fog, the silence from Buckingham Palace began to feel like a total institutional collapse. The public was demanding to know why the institution was allowing its name to be dragged through the mud. For 3 long days, the press corps stood outside the residence of the Princess Royal. They knew Anne was not the type to cower. Within the private corridors of the palace, sources suggested the Princess Royal was incandescent with a cold, righteous rage. On the 4th day, an announcement was made that sent a jolt of electricity through every newsroom. Princess Anne would hold an unexpected press conference at Kensington Palace. This was a move so rare that it signaled the end of the monarchy's passive stance. It was a declaration of war against the rumors. The press room was packed. When the heavy doors finally opened, Princess Anne stepped out in a sharp navy suit that felt more like armor than clothing. She did not offer a smile. She stood at the podium and surveyed the room with a gaze so sharp it could have withered a stone. Her voice was cold and measured. "I do not participate in cover-ups, and I do not allow my name to be used as a convenient pawn in dirty media games," she began. She stated clearly that no such document had ever been brought to her attention, and she had never held a clandestine meeting to discuss the secrets of a teenage pregnancy. But then she introduced a guest who had been waiting in the wings, a man named Jonathan Hale. Hale was a British director who had worked on projects during the mid-2000s. He began to recount a story from 2014, a period when the Duchess was aggressively trying to build a career in the UK. Jonathan explained that Markus Anderson had reached out to him personally, acting as a high-powered unofficial agent. The director described meetings where Markus promised a multi-million-dollar investment for Jonathan's film project, with one non-negotiable condition: Meghan Markle must be cast in the lead role. It was a sophisticated pay-to-play scheme. But the most damaging part came when Jonathan Hale began to describe the chemistry he witnessed between the two. He spoke of seeing them in the quiet corners of the set and private lounges. They were intimate in a way that left no room for any other interpretation, he told the stunned room. He recalled Markus holding her in a way that was far too personal for a mere business associate. Princess Anne took back the podium to deliver her final blow. "The royal family does not hide crimes," she said, "but we also refuse to participate in the fabrication of legends." She walked out without taking a single question, leaving the global media to digest a testimony that changed everything. While Jonathan Hale's story did not provide physical proof of a hidden child, it confirmed the darkest suspicions about the depth of the bond between Meghan and Markus. It painted a picture of a woman whose rise to power was fueled by a man with whom she shared a bond far deeper and more complex than anyone knew. But as the digital dust settled, a new lead emerged from the archives of the Great North. A dedicated group of investigators found a small birth announcement from a local Toronto paper dated precisely 6 months after the alleged disappearance. It mentioned a baby boy born to a private family and placed into the care of a couple whose names were redacted. The real smoking gun was the address associated with the filing a property that years later would be purchased by a holding company with direct ties to the founders of Soho House. This suggested that Markus Anderson's role wasn't a product of her Hollywood success, but the very foundation of it. He wasn't just her friend, he was the architect of her reinvention. While this was unfolding, Prince Harry was reportedly undergoing a dark night of the soul in a secluded rental in Toronto. Sources close to his security detail claimed he had spent hours staring at a folder of documents obtained from a private investigator. He wasn't there to defend his wife this time. He was there to see if the woman he had given up everything for was the woman he actually married. The silence from his camp was screaming an admission that the truth was far more complicated than a no comment. Back in London, the king was in long meetings with Prince William. The topic was containment. The firm had survived abdications and tragedies, but a 30-year deception was a different monster. The king knew that if these rumors were solidified with a DNA test, the constitutional implications would be catastrophic. The final blow of the week came from a grainy handheld video clip uploaded to a burner account. It showed a figure looking remarkably like Prince Harry walking toward the front door of a quiet suburban home in Canada, the same home linked to that 1990s birth announcement. He wasn't carrying flowers, he was carrying a look of total heartbreaking devastation. As he reached for the doorbell, the video cut to black. The dream of Montecito, once a symbol of freedom and modern love, had officially collapsed. It wasn't the press that brought it down, and it wasn't the royal family. It was the weight of 30 years of secrets that finally became too heavy to carry. As we look ahead, the question is no longer whether the Sussexes can survive this, it's whether there is anything left to save. The fairy tale is over, and the reality that has replaced it is a tragedy of Shakespearean proportions.